Good evening and welcome to our webinar, Marketing Basics for Small Businesses. This webinar is being brought to you by the Buffalo Niagara chapter of SCORE, and I'm SCORE Workshops Coordinator Ted Galantowicz. I'm pleased to serve as your host. To begin, I'd like to let you know that all attendee microphones will be muted during the presentation. This webinar is being recorded, and the link to the recorded session will be made available to all registrants within 24 hours. Also, our presenter will make a PDF copy of the slides from this evening's webinar available to register also within 24 hours. Our speaker has requested that if you have a question or a comment during the presentation, that you record your question in the chat box. She will address questions at the end of her presentation. There's a chat box symbol at the bottom of your Zoom screen, which will open the chat box for you to use. Since I brought your attention to the chat box, I'm now going to request that all attendees click on the chat box and go ahead and indicate whether you are not yet in business, whether you are in business for a year or less, or whether you have been in business for more than a year. So one of those three indications. Go ahead and do that now. Not in business yet, business less than 1 year, or business greater than a year. Within the next 48 hours, via email, you'll be receiving an evaluation form regarding this evening's presentation. Please complete the form and return it via email. Before handing over the microphone to our presenter, I'd like to let you know that this webinar is part of SCORE's commitment to promote the success of small business. And we do this through local and nationally available training events, one-on-one mentoring, and by providing numerous online informational resources. SCORE is the volunteer arm of the Small Business Administration, and we have hundreds of chapters and thousands of volunteers throughout the United States. We're unpaid. We're not paid for doing the work that we do. Our Buffalo chapter has about 50 members, and a number of those members do mentoring. Our mentoring is free, it's confidential, and most of our educational events are free. You can contact us at buffaloniagara.score.org and via our national website, score.org. Please note that our Buffalo Niagara chapter has scheduled the following training events. These are the upcoming ones. Tomorrow, Wednesday, March 23rd at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, our Google partner will be presenting Get Your Local Business on Google Search and Maps. That's our monthly Google presentation by a Google trainer. And on Saturday, April 2nd, from 8:30 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon, we are having our in-person Starting and Managing Your Own Business workshop. That's an all-day workshop on Saturday, April the 2nd. This is an 8-hour in-person workshop presented by experienced business experts. And we are all set to go. We're taking signups right now for that. And it is our first in-person event since the beginning of COVID. So if you or someone you know is interested in that, starting and managing your own business all-day workshop, please go to our website, buffaloniagara.score.org, and you can register there. You can register for all of our instructional webinars at buffaloniagara.score.org. And also soon, we will be listing all of our national live training webinars on our buffaloniagara.score.org workshops webpage. You're going to be seeing that fairly soon. Well, at this point, let me stop talking and introduce our presenter. Her name is Ang Jandak. Ang is a marketing professional with over 15 years in the marketing industry with a focus on digital. Ang believes that people are the foundation of any business, and she's adamant about creating and streamlining processes so people can focus on people and not paperwork. Ang is a former SCORE volunteer and has moved out of the Buffalo area and has taken on other responsibilities. We're very pleased to have her present this presentation on marketing basics. And at this point, Ang, let me go ahead and hand over the microphone and the controls to you I'm going to take down my, stop sharing my slide deck here, and go ahead and begin your presentation.
Okay. Apologies. Suddenly, I'm working with a new computer and it's not letting me share my screen. So fantastic. I'm so well prepared today. This is what you get when you have a new computer. Okay.
And if you want me to do the
Nope,
slides,
I've
and you
got
just
it.
tell
I
me.
should be okay. I should be okay now.
Okay. All right,
Sorry.
good.
There we go. Okay. You see my screen now?
Looking good.
Okay, excellent. So small business marketing, marketing essentials. There's going to be a lot of content here that in all honesty should be its own webinar. I do have a link to one of these that we actually did a webinar on, competitor analysis. And so that's its own subject, and I'll link that to at the end of this presentation. So that's why I respectfully ask that all of you hold your questions till the end, so that we can make sure we address everything that's in the material, and then anything after, I'm more than happy to go over. So what we're going to touch on today is an overview of marketing basics, creating a marketing plan, developing your message and your brand, reaching your audience, and customer advocacy. Now, what marketing is, there's a lot of things that people consider what marketing is. What's the difference between marketing and branding, or marketing and advertising? Essentially, marketing is whatever you intentionally put out for the market to consume. There's all kinds of types of marketing. This is just tip of the iceberg, but there's a lot that you could get buried in the weeds on. It's understandable that people find the concept of marketing really overwhelming. So I've boiled it down to two things. Marketing is matchmaking. It's helping people and businesses find goods and services that enrich their lives. Enriching their lives could be time savings, money savings. It could be alleviating a pain point. It could be giving them a benefit. There's a whole bunch of intangibles that it could touch upon, or tangibles that it could touch on. But these people are going to get benefit from whatever it is that you have to offer. And you're just finding a way to speak their language and help them find you. And the second part of marketing is message before delivery. What you say is more important than how you say it. A lot of companies will tell you, you have to do paid, you have to do video, you have to do podcast. It doesn't matter as much what you say, how you say it, if the message itself isn't great. I'm sure we've all heard really bad commercials that all sound the exact same, or we don't even know what the point was. Knowing what you're going to say, why you're going to say it, and who you're going to say it to, something we're going to get into a little bit later, but that is the most important part. And then you can use that same message across different delivery spectrums. So the cycle of marketing. We used to say the marketing funnel or the sales funnel. A lot of people still utilize it. Essentially, it's saying that a lot of people aren't aware of you, and then they become aware, and slowly they go through the narrower part of the funnel. So you go from a lot of people not knowing anything about you to slightly much less people, but a bigger group knowing about you, but not really doing anything. Then a smaller group that's engaging with you in some way. And then the smallest group are people who become customers. So essentially you have to go through a lot, and then you get down to a smaller group who's actually converting and buying through you. One of the ways they frame is awareness and engagement and conversion, all just different words that mean the same thing. But now the concept has moved to the flywheel, which is what we have over on the right here. And essentially that looks at marketing as cyclical. It never stops. It just moves into another iteration. So for example, you have strangers, you attract them to your business, and then they become prospects who will engage with you. Maybe they'll sign up for an email, or they'll follow you on social, or they'll visit you at a trade show, and then they become customers. But it doesn't end there. Then you give them value after they become customers. What HubSpot, who's who invented this. They called the light. Basically, you don't want it to end with them becoming customers. You want to keep giving them value. And then they move from customers to promoters who are actively doing your marketing for you. They're telling other people about you, then they start the attract. And not to mention, then you're going to attract them for the next level of services or the next product. And it's cyclical and it keeps going. Now, creating a marketing plan. There's 4 steps. Identify your target market, research the industry, gather competitive intelligence, and build a marketing strategy. We're going to break all of those down. So first, identify your target market. Number 1, everyone is not your target market. Lots of times when I do a consult with someone, I'll say, who's your target market? And they'll say, oh, everyone. That's not true. There is not a business on earth that everyone is their target market. The largest companies in the world, not everyone is their target market. You have people who would never be caught dead shopping at Walmart. You have people who refuse to have anything to do with Amazon. Oh, people have to buy gas. Well, there's electric cars. There's people who live off the grid and they don't need power through traditional sources. No matter how big a company is, they acknowledge that not everyone is their target market. And as a smaller business, you have to acknowledge that as well. The sooner you realize that and you're able to really focus on who your target market is, the better your conversions will be, the more you'll be able to speak to that person and be able to get them to relate to your business. Don't just focus on demographics. When you're thinking about your target market, don't just say, I want married women with an income of blah, 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 who live in geographic area. Go deeper. Where do they go for dinner? Where do they go for vacation? Do they take vacations or are they a workaholic? Do they have pets? Not just do they have children, but do they have pets? And if so, how do they take care of them? Not because you can necessarily do anything beneficial with it, but it leads into the next step, which is it helps you learn their language. People are extremely varied. And the type of person who is on Facebook is not the type of person who is spending most of their time on TikTok. And understanding how those people interact with the world. I recently worked with a client who wanted help increasing their private coaching business. And they said that they were really trying to get younger people. And they were doing really good with the older people, but they couldn't get the younger demographic. And when I asked how people were to contact them to take the next step, they have to do it through a phone call. And I said, why are you doing that? Why do they have to book you through a phone call? And they said, well, because the conversion rates are ridiculously high. And I said, if somebody is going to, in this market, is going to pick up the phone and call you, they are already sold. In essence, the person that's going to talk to them on the phone, the only thing I could do is unsell it at that point. That person's already convinced themselves, because that is a very high spend of energy. And with younger demographics, a lot of them will do anything to avoid a phone call. So for those people, do you have SMS messaging? Do you have a chat bot? Do you have a form that they can fill out? There's a large swath of people who want nothing to do with the phone. And so understanding them and how they communicate and how they want to be communicated with is a huge part of understanding your target market and how you can speak to them. Create multiple buyer personas. Don't just focus on one, like this is my one ideal client and everything's going to be aimed towards them. There's all kinds of people who can use what you do. And if not, there's people who, so let's say in some crazy world where you really do only have one ideal person who can use it. Well, what about the people who do business with that person? What about the people who buy gifts for that person? There is a wealth of people outside that you need to attract. It's like a target where, yes, fine, the person in the middle is our core target, but every step outside of that is also a touch point that we can make to get more of the person in the middle. And consider what they want from you. Don't just think about what you want from them. It's like dating, right? You have a tendency to, this is what I want in a person, and you don't necessarily consider what they want from you. And so think about your target person. What would be important to them? Not just the things that they want, but also the things that are huge turnoffs. If you know that your target market follows a certain cause, and you speak out against that cause, that's going to be problematic. Or even if you don't do that adamantly, but you use tone deaf language, or I don't know if anybody's seen the show Community. A great example is they had Bear Down for midterms, and they didn't know where the concept came from, but it was a good idea in their head and it sounded really great. And it turns out that the reason it was in their head was because it was on the news that some bear mauled a bunch of kids at a party. And they obviously, when everybody came and they saw the party, they were horrified because it was a very bad, it was very tone deaf. And I can't find the word that I'm looking for, but it was not great. Don't do that with your marketing. Be aware of what your target market cares about and what's going on in their world, and speak to it. And it shows also that you're listening and that you're informed. 2, create a marketing plan, research the industry. So this is another thing that could use its own seminar, but one of the things to look at is your demand. How many people need this? Is this something that just a couple of people need? That doesn't necessarily mean the kiss of death, by the way. If it's something that a small group needs, but they're willing to pay a lot of money for it, that can completely work, and that can completely build the foundation of a business. Is it a seasonal thing? We all know the Spirit Halloween stores that only pop up once a year, but they pop up everywhere. It's still a very sustainable business, even though they do the majority, in fact, almost all of their selling during 31 days of the year. It's still an incredibly profitable business. Look at the market size, niche versus mainstream. This factors into demand, but also other things as well. If you're looking at something that is mainstream and a lot of people would have interest with, yes, you're going to be more likely to have options, but also that's where your competition comes into play and how much you're going to have to fight for those people. If it's something that's a little bit more niche, you're not going to have as much competition usually, but you're going to be much more likely to have people who convert. Indicators, so signs from other places. They can be economic, they can be ecological, talking about the media, what's going on, what's popular. A great example of this that we just went through is COVID. When COVID hit, a lot of businesses had nothing in place. They had to shift. They had to, how many people used curbside pickup before COVID? And now pretty much anything that's retail offers a curbside. And the same thing for restaurants. You have to shift and you have to follow the indicators, see what's important with people. I work with hotels that have noticed with COVID that people want to know about their cleanliness protocols, and they're making their decision based off of that. All the people who got pets during COVID, they want to know what the pet policies are for hotels because they're bringing them with them. There's a huge shift, and following these indicators is really important in understanding how they could reflect back to your business. Considering your location, not only if it's exactly where your business is and everything around it, but is your business going to be online? Is it local? Is it regional, national, international? What are your competitors like? And I know I keep talking about competitors, and competitor analysis is further down, but so many of these things tie together. You can't just silo them. Look at the market saturation, not only how much, but how well they do it. Just because something else exists doesn't mean that it's good. And if you can perform it better, that's a great indicator. It doesn't mean that you can't do it. Oh, well, there's another hamburger place. Well, maybe they only do pub style burgers and people are craving something that's, the thin flat burgers that are stacked really high. There's a whole bunch of options that you could do that if somebody speaks to one thing, you can answer another neglected part of the market, or you can just do it better. You can be faster, you can have better quality. There's a whole bunch of different things to consider. And then pricing, how much and what's the method? And the reason that I bring that up is subscription models have exploded. Some people like subscription models, some people like having smaller payments, some people like doing things annually. Purchases, a lot of times they'll have something like Affinity where you can break a larger purchase down into smaller payments. Are others offering that service? And how are they positioning themselves in their product? So competitive intelligence, which is the competitor analysis. When you're looking at a competitor, don't forget, it's not just local, it's also online. Now, obviously, some things can only be done locally. Landscaping, you aren't necessarily going to be competing with somebody from the other side of the country, but you will be competing with people in search engine results. And if you have an online retail or an online service business, then you could have direct competition that's online in addition to being local. Are they a direct competitor or are they an indirect competitor? So an example of a direct competitor would be, if we'll bring up the burger restaurant again. You have a burger restaurant, somebody else has a burger restaurant. That's a direct competitor. But if you have a burger restaurant and somebody has a pizza restaurant that serves to the same type of clientele, they also, make offerings for people after school games, and, they have deals for economic family packs, the way that you want to have it. Even though it's not technically the same thing, people are still getting the same needs met. And that's the difference between a direct and indirect competitor. Direct is doing the exact same thing that you're doing. Indirect is doing something different, but they're meeting the same needs. One of the easiest things to do that people just overlook is get intelligence on what they share. Go to their website, go to their social. People love to talk about themselves. They love to talk about their business. You can see what they're active in. You can see what their goals are, what they're setting themselves up for in terms of like search terms, what they think is important. Going to social and seeing what they're commenting on, what other people are commenting on about them. If you see people that are talking about, I love this particular server, they're fantastic. They always make me feel so welcome and homey. You're like, okay, the customer service experience is very important to them and they're focusing a lot of attention on that. So that's something that we're going to have to take into consideration. Look at what they're spending money on, their advertising. In addition to just seeing the ads and seeing what they're saying about themselves, where are they doing it? Are they going on TV? Are they going on YouTube? Are they on the radio? Are they on podcasts? There's a lot of local podcasts that small businesses utilize a lot, as well as interest-based. Understanding who they're advertising to tells you a lot about who they think their target market is, and if it's the same people as you think that they are. There's a bunch of research tools. I'm linking them at the end of this presentation, where you can type in your competitor's website. It will show you what ads they've run recently in Google, what keywords that they're utilizing, who is linking back to them, which is also important because, one, you can see if you can link back to those people, or it gives you an idea of other places to link back to. To go back to the hotel thing, something that we're utilizing this sort of research on is seeing, all right, your competitors are being linked to these different universities. So when parents come to visit or for move-in days or what have you, they're all staying in these hotels. Let's figure out how we can not only get on the list for that particular school, but other local schools that your competitors haven't touched yet. So using backlinks, figuring out where they're focusing their attention on, so you can either say, A, this is a good idea, we need to get in on this, or B, hey, they're missing this. This is something that I can completely own and leave them in the dust on. And then the last one is subterfuge. Become a customer, call them, ask questions, see if they know what they're talking about, visit their space. What is the overall feeling of the space? How do people greet you? How do people talk to you when you ask questions? Send somebody in who asks really smart, intelligent questions. Send somebody in who asks really silly beginner questions that could be really annoying to somebody who knows what they're talking about. Pay them money, see how their product works, see how their service works, see if they upsell or if the experience makes you feel good at the end of the day. Your competition and the investment in understanding them could really pay off in huge dividends for you at the end. So another thing you can do is a SWOT analysis. So SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And strengths and weaknesses are positives and negatives that you control. Opportunities and threats are outside forces. So positives and negatives outside of your control. So again, hate to bring it up, but it's something that applies to everybody. COVID was a threat, but it was also an opportunity. You know, if you were able to be a smaller business and you could pivot, you could change things. You know, look at Score. Score went from in-person sessions to meeting on Zoom. That meant that they couldn't necessarily meet everybody's needs locally, but they are able to get access to a national audience for things like this webinar, which is fantastic. So focus not only on your own strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, but your competitors. Are they a well-known local name? Do they have you know, notoriety in the area? Have they been a part of a scandal? You know, all of those things are also important to include in your competitor analysis. You need to be as upfront with the positives and the negatives as possible to fully understand what you are up against. Don't just, you know, kid yourself like, oh, you know, they've closed 2 locations, so, you know, we should be fine. Well, maybe they closed 2 locations because they're opening a new mega location and it was in the news, but you don't want to think about that because it makes you sad. You have to look at everything, look at the entire picture. So now we're into marketing strategy. So you need to develop your message and brand. Again, this is something that I'm really passionate about. I'm going to try really hard to rein it back and not ramble about it for a very, very long time. But you need to understand your value proposition, how your product or service solves problems or improves situations, addresses pain points, what specific benefits customers can expect. Don't be vague, be very specific. Give them tangibles, give them intangibles. Save time means more time with your family, if that's what's important to your target market. Save times means more time for travel, if that's what's important to your target market. Why customers should buy from you over your competitors. We're going to go into some examples in a minute. This is laundry detergent. I have 3 different brands at 3 very different price points with 3 different messages. This laundry detergent is actually what got me into marketing. I was so interested in the concept of what they call usability, which is the psychology behind marketing, that you can sell essentially the same product to 2 very different people for very different price points based on the branding and the messaging. So for example, Tide is the economical choice. It's very bright, it's very bold. It's for harried, busy people who are running through a store and they want to grab something that they know. They have brand recognition, they see the bottle, they can throw it in the cart, and they don't have to think about it. 7th generation, it's about being more eco-friendly. So the leaf is very prominent. There's very minimal decoration on the bottle. It's smaller, but roughly the same price as the Tide, even though you're not getting as much. That smaller size even convinces people the fact that it's more eco-friendly because it's not this giant warehouse-sized bottle of detergent. And then on the end, we have Frey. Frey is a bespoke laundry detergent. It comes in this tiny bottle. It doesn't even come in a pour jug handle. It comes with a pump. It's about having a laundry experience. You pay an astronomical amount of money for having your clothes cleaned with Frey. But also this particular one, Frey has different versions of bottles. This is a very masculine bottle. It attracts a very different type of person than the other 2. These are all the same thing. They all clean your clothes, but because of the messaging and because of how the brands are built up, they attract different people, they speak to different people, and different people purchase the product. So again, we're going to focus on who, the market, what is the offer, the service or product, and then how, their goals, pain points. Sometimes we talk about where, so if we're talking about location type stuff, but we're going to go over some brands and we're going to focus on how they handled who, what, and how. So this is Aura. Aura offers digital photo frames, and they're a little bit more tech heavy than some of them. A lot of digital photo frames, you just put the media on a thumb drive or SD card and then you plug it in. With Aura, it's all remote. You can set it up manually, or not set up manually. You can set it up and then the person who opens the gift just plugs it in and everything is there. They have a huge focus on family, long distance grandparents, long distance relationships. That's huge in all of their marketing and branding, and they're a higher end product. They charge more than other similar products. So you can see they have a video that plays in the background on their website of a grandmother who's talking to her daughter and grandchild on the phone. You can see that she's sad, forlorn. She opens up this gorgeous package because, again, it's a high-end experience. She sees her daughter and her grandchild in this frame, and it's excited because it keeps them connected. And then you can see an ad that they're focusing on for Mother's Day. And they talk about staying connected because, again, that's a huge part of their brand. Their brand is not about, showing your life. It's not like an inward thing. It's about connecting with other people, being able to update the photos long distances. That's what they're focusing on. So that is important for their message and branding. This is DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo is a web browser that respects your privacy. It's very simple. You don't have a sign-in because they don't want your information. Unlike every other web browser that exists, they don't track your search history. They don't read your emails. They don't do any of that because they feel that their positioning is for a browser that respects privacy and lets people do what they do and doesn't sell your data to marketing companies and big business. That's what DuckDuckGo is. It's why it's very, very simple. It doesn't ask you for very much, and they don't do a lot of advertising because they financially, they don't get as much because they're not selling big data. Squarespace, if you've ever seen a video on YouTube or listened to a podcast, somebody somewhere is pitching Squarespace, and Squarespace, that works for their particular brand because it's all about elegant, easily accessible websites. There are people who can make better websites. There are websites that are much more SEO friendly. Squarespace is not actually SEO friendly, but if you want to start a shop, and you want to set it all up in an afternoon, Squarespace allows you to do that. You don't have to know a lot. You don't have to hire people to do stuff. You can do everything in-house. And that's why Squarespace has focused so much of their energy in advertising with influencers, because influencers create these products. Influencers make other people think that they can do this. And so what do they want to do? They want to use what their hero is using. What their hero says that they use Squarespace, I want to use Squarespace. That part of their advertising, their messaging fits in with their brand and what their brand represents. So a lot of people use message and branding interchangeably, and there are a lot of different terms that float around, but essentially your brand is about personality. Every touch point that somebody has is a part of your brand and like who your brand represents. If your company was a person, that would be your brand. Marketing is about actions, what that person brand does, what they put out there in the world for consumption. That is your marketing. What they put out, let me rephrase that, what they put out for consumption, no, that is your marketing, because as they say, even bad press is press. Any sort of actions, what you put out there, that's considered marketing. So an important part of reaching your audience, I'm just going to touch on this briefly. You have to have a website. You can't just do social media. You don't control social media. If Facebook or Instagram decides to shut down your account for whatever reason, you lose all of that. You lose your access to your customers. You lose all of your content. None of the content that you upload to social media belongs to you. It belongs to them. And it's something that's in the service agreement you sign. When you have a website, you have control. You can, get information that you need. Your data and analytics is much more accessible to you, and you can grow your business and scale it up much more easily than if you're working off of social media. Make sure that you're listing your location. If you have a physical location, you're doing on Google My Business. You can also set up schema, which is code that you put in the head of your website that tells Google and other search engines, this is what this page is about. That's why sometimes, like if you're looking up a recipe, or you're looking up a book, or you're looking up a movie, Google displays all of those things very differently because people have set up the schema in the back end. And they also have that for businesses. You know, if it's an online business, if it's a website, if it's a local business, all of that information is there. Create social media pages. There's all kinds of different social media. Again, make sure that it's a good fit. You don't just want to do anything. You want to make sure that it's a good fit for what your target market is. And remember, your business is not about you. Your business might, you know, even though you start, oftentimes I see business owners get so obsessed with, this is my baby. You know, it needs to be what I want it to be. And that's doing a disservice to you and what you've built. Your business is about the end users. It's about your customers. And make all of your decisions not based around what you want, but around what would work for your customers. In order to do that, you have to know what makes a good customer. I'm sure we've all seen videos or heard stories about people say, you can't do this to me, I'm a customer, or, you know, I'm a good customer, I'm a loyal customer. Are they though? Are they somebody who comes in and supports your company, somebody who is sweet and thoughtful to your employees, or is it somebody who comes in and is angry and asks for free stuff multiple times a week? What's the lifetime value of that customer? Is it beneficial to you, or are they causing more problems than they solve? You don't need to reward people just for giving you the time of day. Ensure that you're only promoting people who, if you could clone them, you would want more of them to be customers. If you think to yourself, oh, I would hate to have another version of this person, then they're not a good customer, and you don't necessarily have to make them happy. Loyal customers, people who, you know, consistently frequent your business, who are good customers, they're 5 times as likely to repurchase your product and forgive you for a mistake. They're 7 times as likely to try a new product offering, and they're 4 times as likely to refer a friend or colleague. Keep in mind that a customer experience is much more than what you consider your customer service. How easy it is for someone to contact you, how your delivery drivers, you know, how they drive on the road. Those are all part of the customer experience. How easy it is to make a return. Consider that's why, you know, we talked about the competition and doing subterfuge. We want to know how easy it is to do all those things with your competitor as well. Make sure you're getting client feedback, surveys, personal interviews, social media, and reviews. If somebody has a bad review, follow up on it. Don't just follow up on the good ones. Don't just follow up on the bad ones. You know, anybody who has a perfect 5-star review, people have a tendency not to trust those for very good reason, because it's very easy to buy reviews. And if you see someone who writes a ridiculous off-the-wall 1-star review, good people can tell the difference between that and authentic bad review. So keep that in mind, and make sure that you're following up with people and you're giving reviews the weight that they deserve. If it's something that you think is something that you could grow from, something that you can change, something that deserves your attention, then by all means correct it. But if you think that it's something that goes against the very, you know, concept of what your business is, you know, I went to Chuck E. Cheese and there were too many screaming children. Well, maybe you don't belong at Chuck E. Cheese. You know, take all of that into consideration when you're looking at reviews. Remember, you can do it. I believe in you. Ted believes in you. We all believe in you. SCORE is available if you want to do individual one-on-one counseling. And also at the end of the resource list, which is available in the PDF version, you will see a persona building tool for building buyer personas, a competitor research tool, tool for helping you build a marketing plan, different links for market research, and also a link to the competitive analysis seminar that I did previously. I see that we already have questions coming in, which I will be more than happy. Okay, let's see. All right. Mavis, thank you for the PDF. She mentioned we need our own website. What about Etsy? I make crocheted items. So there's a couple of different options. Etsy does take, Etsy has been changing a lot, and it's a lot more difficult to make sales if you're not willing to advertise on Etsy. So keep that in consideration. The reason that Etsy is a great place is because they do a lot of marketing. They get people in the door for you, and then they just search for the keywords, and you're part of a curated marketplace, right? But that also means that all those people are your competition, and if they buy more ads, then it's hard to get listed and to get seen. What I see a lot of people doing is they have a one-page website where they talk about what it is that they do, they show samples, and then they have a link to their Etsy store where they go directly to the Etsy store. They bypass a lot of other options. What's the one? Miniature Inspirations. Let me see if I can get out of here and find it. But they're a miniature felter that they have an Etsy store as well as an online shop. So they use the Etsy store because, again, you have to pay for listings, each individual listing on Etsy. So they'll show some items, but then they have a larger majority of items on here. They have items that would get them copyright struck on Etsy. That gives them more flexibility to have their own website. Marina, are there SCORE volunteers that can help with some website assistance? Ted would be the best person to ask about that. I don't, each chapter has their own volunteers, and each volunteer chapter has their own different specialties. So at Buffalo, I helped a lot with websites, but I know that they've had a bunch new people who work with that. So I'll let Ted speak to that.
Yeah, do you want me to do that now?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you want me to do that now?
Yeah, if you'd like to.
Okay, well, I think there's a distinction that people have to draw between what mentoring is and between and what actually going ahead and assisting a client with. Assisting a client with the construction of a website is not something mentors do. We would refer the client to appropriate resources where they could find out about website construction. But that's essentially, as far as mentoring goes, we don't actually work with the client to create the client's website. We don't do that.
Okay, and they mentioned not to construct just a guide, but they will tell you, this is what makes a good infrastructure. Make sure you have this base covered, but they aren't going to do the work for you. Yes, it's a good call. Let's see. I want to see. It said that people had their hands raised, and I want to see if there was. I just Lamar. Lamar, if you want to unmute yourself, or actually I can unmute you. I think I have that power. And I apologize if anybody hears my coworker in the background. If there are any other questions, I'd love to help. If you have anything that wasn't covered necessarily. Is there an inexpensive but reliable place to get clients? Seems like Thumbtack is kind of expensive. I have a Facebook page, but I don't get a lot of action yet with that. So this is why understanding your target market is so important, because I love to find out what people are interested in and then kind of hit them when they're not expecting it. So think about it this way. If you have a product, let's say you have a product that's cosplay oriented, people, it's very, very niche. Not a lot of people are interested in it, but that there's a comic book store that, a lot of people who are into cosplay are going to go to a comic book store. You can go there, say, hey, I would love to put some cards out. I would love to put a flyer up, that sort of thing. The problem with so many listing things like Angie's List and Thumbtack is, one, they're so oversaturated, and two, it's too easy to buy reviews. It's too easy to buy promoted listings, to say what you want. I know there's a big thing with Wedding Wire and the Knot a while back, where, they were just, if you weren't spending money, they weren't letting you promote your business. It's very hard to find clients that way. So that's why lots of times people will create content or create something that's shareable to help you find clients. So let's see, if Laura Ann would you mind telling us what your business is?
Yeah, I think I got muted. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
So I started a professional organizing business.
A professional what? I'm sorry.
Professional organizing.
Oh, okay. Like the home edit on Netflix.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay. So what I would do is I would look at people who need organization, your target market. Are they people who are just generally disorganized and they need to start, with something in their lives? Are they working parents? Are they professionals who just don't have time to deal with it and they want to throw money at somebody to make the problem go away? All of these could benefit, but that's where, your brand and everything. Is there one of those markets that you feel you would naturally gravitate more towards?
I think part of my issue is I need to kind of figure out what my niche is.
Mhm.
What I would like to, specialize in, which I think I have it narrowed down to, because I have a background in office work for 21 years. I think I kind of want to specialize in an office type, organization setting.
Mhm. So then you would go to places where small businesses would gather, where people go to help for those sorts of things. A great place would be networking events, industry events, finding any sort of organization. So associations, that sort of thing. And, who still utilizes organization and needs that. And the thing is there's a lot of companies who still need that. So a lot of, who was I just talking to the other day? Somebody who the government contracts their company to do work, but they have to have physical filing on hand for at least 10 years. And so they have to manually handle these files because they've just been put in boxes for years and years and years. So maybe focusing on a very specific task that people would need help with in office settings. I know you mentioned that Facebook, it's hard to get traction. There's a reason for that. Facebook wants you to pay money for exposure. I have a friend who has a giant animal rescue sanctuary. She's been featured multiple times on Ellen. She has, I think, like over 250,000 people follow her Facebook page, she has to pay thousands of dollars every month in order for people to see her posts. That's just how Facebook works. That's how their algorithm is set up. So it's very hard to get traction on Facebook. The only way that you can is if people are purposefully going to your page manually to check you out. You can't just expect to show up and have people discover you that way. So that's, one of the reasons why I say it's good to, even if it's just one page, to have a website. But yeah, I think if you're feeling office work, focus on what people would be searching for. They might not be searching for office organization. They might be searching for, filing, or certain terms. I'm sure that you'd be much more familiar than I would with the very specific tasks that are attached to it and need to be done. But I would definitely focus on those. And when you're looking for new clients, think about where those people are, small businesses, legal, networking, any sort of association. Feel free to start, go to one of those associations and say, hey, I would love to, if this is something that you're comfortable with, I would love to teach or do a presentation on organizing this type or different types of filing systems and how to organize them so that they can be digitized more easily, that sort of thing. I could keep going, but I know that there are other questions. I'm so sorry. Did any of that help you?
Yes, thank you.
Good, I'm glad.
Yes, Ange, there is a hand up from Lamar Rivera. Lamar, if you want to open up your microphone and let us in on your question or comment.
Lamar, if you, I know that we mentioned you earlier, if you do manage to get your mic working, feel free to chime in. In the meantime, I'll address some of the other questions. Let's see here. Mavis, you asked how you determine who is your target market.
Yes.
Think about what is it that you offer?
I make hand crocheted items. I started off with scarves because they're relatively quick compared to blankets or hats. So obviously it'll be people who wear scarves, but not everybody wears scarves.
But okay, when you look at it, think about the types of scarves that you like, or even, I love blankets. I have way too many blankets. I will always buy blankets. I love to buy blankets for other people. And there are all kinds of different crochet patterns and colors and things like that. So think about, do you want something, what do you like to work with? Do you like to do things that are vibrant and fun? Do you like to do really comfortable yarns and things like that? When you look at what the competition is doing and you see what's working for them, what you like, what you don't like, there's a market for, I know that there's a company that sells single socks. And the reason that they do is they figure you're always going to lose one. So why not have, the mismatch? So maybe you could sell scarves and packs, if they're really simple designs that you can knock out really quick. Like here, you pick the colors, I can knock them out really quick, have custom colors, and you have them for all winter. That sort of thing. And so then who you're targeting is you're targeting forgetful people. You're targeting busy people, college students, gifts for people who have loved ones who maybe just moved away from a warm climate to a cold climate. They've never had to experience that sort of thing before. Figuring out what you want to do and what you want your business to be, that's a really big step in understanding who your target market is.
Okay.
Does any of that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense in a way. It's sort of like when I look at a crochet pattern and I work on it, and because I know what it looks like in the end, that helps me complete it.
And, you know, there are people who just do plushies, you know, like little stuffed crochet animals.
Yeah.
Yep. You know, and there's, you know, a certain sort of feeling to certain crochet patterns or things like that. So, you know, I would definitely suggest doing a lot of competitor analysis, but also in addition to that, you know, I put a bunch of market research links in the back and seeing what other people are utilizing. So in terms of like fashion, when it comes to scarves, is there a certain type of, you know, pattern or knit or something? I know that for a long time, like infinity scarves were a really big thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, looking into what people are doing and what you think would be a good fit for you, and what you want your company to be, I think that that would be really beneficial in helping you pin down your target market.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So what do I think about radio marketing? Funny you should bring that up. One of my previous mentors, he was very adamant about what he calls the power of sound. And sound is very subconscious. That's why, you know, so many people, they'll put things on while they're asleep so that they can learn languages and read books basically in their sleep. Subconsciously, our ears are always working. That's how, oh, what's the term? I can't, where they would secretly like put layers of sound in things and, you know, kind of brainwash people to do things. Subliminal, thank you. Subliminal messaging. You know, that all of that works because of sound. Now, with radio, you have to be aware of your audience, and it's really difficult, especially now, because so much of radio has become part of conglomerates. So there isn't so much local radio. There's a lot of, you know, it's just national. And then the advertising is local, but consider who is listening to that station. And when is it busy? Is it only on the commute times? And when you do it, be smart about it. Like, okay, I can't afford every single commute, but I can afford doing a commercial on Mondays and Wednesdays. So you're still hitting those same people. You're just not hitting them as frequently. And you can also do ads on products like Spotify. You can create an ad. It's really easy to set up, you know, but our ears do a lot of things. You know, you'll start humming something because you accidentally heard it on somebody else's car that you drove by in the morning. You know, so when it comes to radio advertising, knowing your target market and, you know, who's listening to that station, what businesses is it playing on? Are people listening in their cars? I'm not going to say it's a bad idea. I think that it can be really, really successful when done right, but you have to do a lot of research to make sure that it's done right. Can you ever do too much branding for your business? I think a big part of it is understanding, again, your target market. Some target markets don't trust anything that looks too polished. They have an innate distrust for it. There was a study that was done a couple of years ago about videos that have really high production value, do not convert well, and they don't perform as well as videos that people do with their iPhones that don't have a lot of transitions and editing tricks on them. So understanding, again, it all comes back to understanding your target market. I know I sound like I'm beating a dead horse, but it really is the most important thing. Understanding your target market, understanding what their tolerance is, because we all have different tolerances, right? Understanding what their tolerance is for branding and how polished they want it to be. And, you know, some companies, they do really well with having customized tissue paper when they send you a package. Others, here, you get a brown box, and that's part of the charm. So it all depends on your target market and what your goal is for your business. Mark, I'm sorry, do you have a question? Sorry, I thought I heard somebody talking. Robin, Facebook seems like it's dying. People are walking away from it. So there's a whole bunch of reasons. And this is why when we talk about, seeing what's going on economically, geologically, Europe has put out sanctions against Facebook because of the data privacy breaches. The young people who initially were the ones who flocked to Facebook, they don't go there anymore. And because of the algorithm, they have essentially created echo chambers. So it's very hard to get exposed to new content as a business. And it's very difficult to grow communities there, which is one of the reasons that people flock to Facebook. So I'm not going to say it's dying, because I think that that's ridiculous when people say that. It's changing. And I think that understanding what your goals are and how that factors into what you want to do with your business makes it important for if you should continue with Facebook or not. Keep in mind that Facebook also owns Instagram. So even if your product might not be a good fit for Facebook, it might be a good fit for Instagram. And there is definitely a demographic that still utilizes Facebook for the majority of their social media. And if that's where your target market is, then, focus your energies there. The other thing to remember about Facebook is very similar to Google Posts. They do have an algorithm. They do have SEO equivalencies in their advertising. So even if you don't do things actively, you might just want to post content up there and feed the Google bots. Could you expand more on the animal rescue marketing or other services such as veterinary? All right, so that comes into play with, again, what your goal is. So with animal rescue, is it fundraising or is it getting adoptions? Is it awareness? Is it getting volunteers to sign up? You can have a bunch of different goals, or what they call conversion points, simultaneously, and each of them could have different target markets. So if you have somebody who isn't necessarily ready to volunteer yet, but they would be interested in a newsletter, or somebody who wants to set up, who join a Patreon for exclusive content in exchange for monthly donations. All of those are conversion points. All of those speak to different target markets. And it depends on what your goal for that particular thing is. With veterinary, I'll tell you, I chose my vet because they're a fear-free vet. They focus on animals that have really high anxiety and working with them, and their marketing spoke to that, and that is why I chose them. And I will only go to a vet who has those practices from now on. Some people, they want a vet that's open really late at night, who has different hours so that they can work with their schedule. Or maybe they want a vet that is all about natural remedies or high tech, somebody who's on the cutting edge. Understanding, again, your target market, that will feed into a lot of your marketing. With the vets and the animal rescue, I like to, again, consider where those people go. Is there a tack shop? Is there an independent pet store? Yes, thank you very much. All of those are places where you can not necessarily just market in person, but also create content for their website, have them link back to you as a local resource, reach out to local hotels. Again, that's something, like I mentioned, working with hotels, building their pet policies. I'm trying to get all of them to not just say, hey, we allow dogs, but hey, this is where a great walking path for your dog. This is the closest pet store. This is the closest vet. This is the closest emergency vet. Here are directions. Maybe take the initiative and reach out to those places on your own and say, hey, we would love to be the official vet for your property, and have a listing, and here's information that we can give to you, or a pamphlet we can give to you with when your guests check in with pets. That's all counts as marketing. Does any of that answer your question or request? There's so many questions. Okay. All right, let me go back up here. A lot of my customers come to my website from Pinterest and Instagram. Do you think it would be beneficial to invest in paid ads on those platforms, or would you try Google ads or somewhere else instead? So it would be interesting to know what content they're coming from. So is it something that you've created for use on Pinterest? Lots of times people will do lists or how-tos or infographics that people will put together on Pinterest boards or Instagram because, you know, they want to share it. Understanding where exactly that traffic is coming from and what they've clicked on and what their intent is, I think would be really important to understand where you should focus your energies. I think that's why lots of times when you go to like a recipe or something, they'll have a special pin it button and they'll have very specific images that they want you to use that they've optimized for Pinterest or Instagram or what have you. So understanding what that content is and where it came from, I would say not. Again, it depends on your target market. I don't see Pinterest ads that convert really well. People use Pinterest as essentially a giant file folder. They aren't necessarily looking at it to buy things when they're ready. Or they look at it to store things until they're ready to buy. They don't necessarily like having someone try to push a timeline on them. Instagram, maybe. I know a lot of people who buy things from Instagram, not just personally, but just, you know, in general. Instagram advertising, if set up properly, can be really beneficial. I wouldn't say without having a really good infrastructure. I think that Google ads, they aren't a bad thing, but they have to be set up properly. You can't just have somebody go to a homepage. It goes with everything else, you know, message before delivery. What is the goal? Do you want somebody to sign up for something? Do you want them to buy a very specific product? When they click on the ad, make sure that they go directly to a page that addresses what they look for. I had a client who offered a very specific type of training that was free training. And when people would click on it, they couldn't get to the class to sign up. They landed on the homepage. They would have to go through several menus to find it. And it wasn't beneficial. They weren't getting conversions, even though lots of people were clicking. And keep in mind with Google ads, you have to pay for those clicks. So they were paying money to not get people because they made the experience too difficult. So you want to make sure that if you are going to do Google ads, you have a plan and you're not doing them just because you're trying to put out the money. I think lots of times people think that online advertising is transactional. Like you put money out and you get clients back. And it used to be that way. But now so much is automated. There's so much competition. You really have to be focused and have a plan when you go into online advertising. Hopefully that helped. How should you go about asking a business if you market out of their business? Tatiana, could you expand on that a little bit? While we're waiting on Tatiana, what is the best way to market a transition when moving a business from one location to another? So there's two aspects of it. One is you want to do the groundwork so that when you do move, everything is seamless. And you also kind of want to prep clients and get them in the pipeline. So you're going to want to switch your Google My Business listing, but you can use posts which again are SEO optimized to say, hey, we're going to be moving to this location. You'll start getting some traction for that location. See if there are any partner listings or announcements that you could go on, or Facebook groups. I know I said Facebook is bad, but like they have a lot of location-based groups, or next door, you know, tell people that you're moving to an area, see what business groups you can be a part of, and network with them. Find out if there are local like things to do websites or interest websites. Where do the locals go for information when you're moving? Lay the groundwork so that you're telling those people you're coming soon. And then, you know, have one day and make sure you update what they call your UNAP, which stands for URL, name, address, and phone number. Because on things like Google My Business and Facebook, all of those have to be the exact same. If you have a hyphen in one place, or you include your LLC, like it needs to be the exact same across all of them, or you will be penalized. So when you're updating your address, make sure, are you writing out Drive, or are you doing DR? Are you using just the first part of your zip code, or the entire thing? Make sure that it's all consistent and that you update them roughly on the same day. It doesn't have to be, but the longer that they're not synced, the more detrimental it will be to your SEO rankings. And, you know, just keep people informed. If you have an email list or an email newsletter, it's a great opportunity to tell people, hey, we're moving, sign up for the email newsletter to keep abreast of what's going on. You know, or SMS texting. You know, are you going to be able to provide goods and services after the move? What is your plan for doing that? That was something else that came up with COVID a lot. People want to know, are your hours different? If I pull up and I make the effort to get to a car, you know, and I realize that you're not there, that's going to be a bad customer experience. I just want to know what to expect. So letting people know what to expect is really important. Let's see here. Robin had a thought for Laura Ann. It might be beneficial. She considered writing a book about organizing. The book could help drive new clients for a website. So something that is a good, and I want to speak to that really really quickly, is I think that a book is a great idea, but there's a lot of effort that goes into creating, publishing, and then marketing a book. I think what would be really beneficial is bite-sizing your content and doing things like somebody can sign up and get a tip a day or a tip a week, something like that. You can create infographics for how to handle different projects. Another thing that would be great is, I think, a time lapse. Here's a big project. Here's how I'm whittling it down. We're going to pause it. This is the steps that I took. You know, this is what I'm going through. Keep in mind, you have to, with a lot of people, especially what you're doing, you have to prove your value before they'll sign up with you, because you know, they don't want to pay somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about. They don't want to pay somebody who's just going to take their money and then not going to help them. You need to exhibit your value. So if you can do it in tiny bite-sized pieces that show that you know what you're doing, that they think that, you also want to show them you could do this on your own, but you're not going to, because it's really hard. Wouldn't it be so much easier if you just threw money at me to do it for you? That's kind of the concept. And if you do it in bite size, it's much more likely that people are going to read it and engage with it. So that's something to keep in mind. Again, I think that the book is a great idea, but writing a book is a job in and of itself. It's a business in and of itself. So doing it in little bite-sized nuggets that you can share on social, make tiny videos on your phone, you know, all of that are also things that you could do to not only establish your expertise and get future clients, but also build a social following. Every time I look, there's more questions, which is great. I have a bounce house rental business. How do I go about asking daycare schools, et cetera, about marking out of their business, like leaving business cards and flyers? So what I would do is make sure you have all your collateral together and then kind of focus on one thing at a time, in terms of like, you don't want to bounce around from business to business. So when you think about, for instance, would you say a school? So let's think about schools. Public schools, there's going to be a lot of hoops to jump through. You want to look for schools that have event calendars where they list things like carnivals. And they list, events that would lend themselves to bouncy houses, because not every school will, not every daycare will. Looking for photos of events where people are utilizing them. And so once you have that information, what would be the best step in the door? What usually stops somebody from buying a bouncy house? What is their point, their tipping point? Is it a really cool bouncy house? Oh, look, my bouncy house has unicorns with it. My bouncy house is the biggest bouncy house. My bouncy house has music, has speakers, so all that can be piped in. What is going to be your unique selling point that you're going to offer them? And so before you even contact them, figure out what your unique selling point is and how you're going to tell that to them. So you can say, hey, I've noticed that every year for the fall festival, you utilize a bouncy house. And I've noticed that you have a really long line because it seems that there isn't enough room in the bouncy house and it's so popular. I wanted to reach out because I happen to offer the Goliath brand of bouncy houses, and I would love for you to be able to utilize it this year. It's a lot more work. I'm not going to pretend that it's not, but it's a higher conversion rate. People are going to be much more likely to buy from you because it shows that you've done the work and you're not selling to them just to sell. You're selling to them to solve a problem that they have. And keep in mind that when we talk about marketing, we're either solving problems or giving them benefits. We aren't just selling things because it makes our life easier. Oh, I would appreciate it if you gave me money. No, we have to give them a reason to give us money. So when you're looking at schools and daycares and any sort of thing, I look at colleges. College kids love that stuff. Any sort of indie company, who's like, oh, we're the cool company for our employees. Reach out to them. Adults, with how stressed everybody is, things like bouncy houses apply to more than just kids. If the bouncy house can handle it. Maybe have a middle of the week package, and kind of push that out there. Be like, hey, hump day is now jump day. And so on Wednesdays, you can have a bouncy house for half off for 2 hours. Those are all things that are considerations that you could do. But again, it's all about understanding your product and your target market and what your goal is. I hope that helps. How do you best request feedback from customers if you're at a craft show? So something that I like to do, again, it helps if you have your own website, is ahead of time. And you can even do like a Google form, which is free. And you can do a shortened URL and they'll give you a link to that Google form. And then you can have it printed out on a card. And then at the trade show, say, hey, I would love if you could fill out this form. And here's a link to it. Or please give us a review on Google. It's hard because, to get people to do things because once it's out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. But I find that with cards, especially if it's a full form as opposed to asking them to go through Google, sometimes you can say, hey, if you fill out this form, everybody who fills out this form from the trade show will be entered into a drawing for XYZ. The important thing with the forms like that is you're doing this to get information. It's not a review or anything like that, because you never want to be accused of bribing people for reviews. But you can incentivize people for telling you what they think. It's a very fine line. But yeah, so if you go to Google Forms and you create a form and you go to share. They'll give you a link, but they also have a little checkbox that you can tick for a link shortener, and it'll make a much shorter link that you could have printed out on cards. You could also have what is a QR code. You could have a QR code made that goes to that link, and then you could just have it on a sticker at your booth and say, hey, if you would just scan this with your phone really quick, it takes you to a quick form. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. You know, and that's also how you can handle things like newsletter signups and things like that. Hold on just a second. Nope. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Okay. Did I reach the end?
Yes, I think you have.
Okay.
Well, if there's anyone else that does have a question, can they go ahead and get in touch with you to ask the question?
Sure. I actually believe my SCORE email is still active. Yeah, if you want to, I think it's, I have to look, but yeah, I will make sure that when Ted sends out the PDF that you have a way to get in contact with me. I just have to double check and make sure that I give the right address out.
Okay, very good. Well, I want to thank you, Ange, for a terrific presentation and great responses to questions. Thank you, attendees, for being with us this evening. And please keep in mind that you can go ahead and find all of our upcoming workshops, whether live in person, or whether webinar type over Zoom. You can find them on buffaloniagara.score.org, and wish everybody a pleasant evening, and please stay healthy. Thanks, Ange.
Take care, everyone.